Hey, I'm Daniel Mitchell, a 22-year-old who loves bartending. You'll usually find me mixing drinks and chatting with the cool crowd at one of the best spots in town. Bartending is more than just a gig for me, it's my jam. There are my regulars here, and one of them is Ronald. The clinking of glasses and the low hum of conversation filled the air as I stood behind the bar, polishing a tumbler with practiced efficiency. His presence was as familiar to me as the worn grooves on the counter, and I greeted him with a nod, already reaching for his usual drink. But tonight, something seemed off about him, a tension in his usually relaxed demeanor. I asked, pouring a generous measure of whiskey into his glass. "Rough day, Ronald?" He replied, taking a sip of his drink. "You could say that Danny got some things weighing on my mind." I leaned against the bar, giving him my full attention. Ronald had become more than just a customer over the years. He was a friend, and I was always willing to lend an ear. "Anything you want to talk about?" "It's my kids. They're so wrapped up in their own lives that they don't have time for an old man like me anymore." I listened as Ronald opened up about his daughter, Rebecca, and his son, Andrew, both too busy chasing their dreams to spare a thought for their father. His words struck a chord with me. Despite our age difference, I understood the feeling of being overlooked and undervalued. But Ronald wasn't just lamenting his children's neglect, he was grappling with his own mortality. With no one to care for him in his old age, he had made the difficult decision to donate his wealth and possessions, fearing that his family would only squabble over his estate once he was gone. "It's a lonely feeling, Danny, to know that your own flesh and blood would rather see you buried than spend a moment in your company." I nodded sympathetically, my heart aching for my friend. "I hear you, Ronald, but you're not alone, you know? You've got friends here, at the bar, and we'll always have your back." "Thanks, Danny, I appreciate that." With a gentle pat on the back, I turned back to the bar, knowing that Ronald's burdens wouldn't disappear overnight. But for now, at least he knew he had someone in his corner, and in a world as unpredictable as ours, that was worth its weight in gold. As Ronald continued to share his troubles, I couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy for the guy. Here he was, pouring out his heart to me, a bartender much younger than him. It made me grateful for my own dad, who had always been a rock for me, despite the ups and downs of life. Ronald was pretty hammered, and I figured I'd play the good guy and offer him a ride home. It's not unusual for me to do that for my regulars, especially when they're feeling generous with their tips. So, with Ronald's nod of approval, I took the wheel and headed to his place. I half expected some housekeeper to open the door when we got there. Pressing the doorbell, Ronald leaned on me for support, his intoxication evident. "Dad? He's pretty drunk today, may I?" I gestured to come in. "Yes, this way." I put Ronald down on the couch and looked up. Couldn't be more shocked than this. I disbeliefly asked her, "Are you his daughter?" "Yes." "Rebecca?" "Yes. How do you know my name?" "How couldn't I?" "Don't you recognize me? Am I supposed to?" She slightly rolls her eyes and offers me a tip. I couldn't believe this woman. "Oh, how would you recognize me? I grew up, Mom." With that, I rushed to the door, leaving her there without looking back. Just as I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps behind me. Rebecca caught up, but before she could say anything, a voice interrupted us. "Mom, is Grandpa home?" I turned around to see a teenage boy, and the way he addressed Rebecca made everything clear. He was her son. Ronald, despite being drunk, lit up at the sight of the boy. "Ethan, you here?" He embraced Ethan warmly, and that was my cue to leave. With everything falling into place, I simply said my goodbyes. "Good night, Ronald." As I walked away from Ronald's mansion, my mind was swirling with thoughts. There was a twinge of anger, sure, but deep down I knew it was what it was. The encounter with Ronald had stirred up memories I'd long pushed aside. You see, I'd always had this inkling about my mom. My dad had mentioned their breakup and how he chose to raise me alone. But my mom, she never bothered to share her side of the story. She never told me about her family, about Ronald being my grandpa. It was like she'd disappeared from my life without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a void. So, there I was face to face with the woman who basically abandoned me when I was a kid. I kept thinking about it but accepted the fact that it is what it is. So, the next evening, as always, I was at the bar serving customers when Ronald arrived. I maintained my composure and asked, "Hey there, Ronald. The usual? Actually, I'm here to talk to you." I wasn't really prepared for this conversation, but I couldn't avoid it forever. so I nodded in response. I was drunk, but I heard something last night. Do you? Before he could finish, I interrupted. I had no idea about any of this, and I didn't have any ulterior motives in approaching you. If it concerns you, I won't serve you anymore. And I had no intention of reconnecting with my mom either. Ronald listened intently as I spoke, his expression betraying deep thought. I could sense he was processing something significant. When he finally broke the silence, his question caught me off guard. So, you're saying that you're her son? I met his gaze, surprised by his reaction. Oh, you didn't know? Ronald's blank expression spoke volumes, leaving me to wonder about the dynamics at play. Why don't you ask her? And wait, you're here to confirm it from me? Oh, you know me, Daniel. Anyway, even though you don't have any intention to approach me, but I had. All this time, I always found solace in our conversations. Now I understand why. I am used to his calm demeanor as we always have talked on various topics. He knows a lot about me. I share my goals and dreams, and he always tells me about different topics. But something hit me today. I feel trapped in front of him. He seems like a stranger to me. I want you to experience what you've always wanted, Danny. I can make it happen. You have a family waiting to be discovered. Consider getting to know them at least once, and nothing changes between us. You trust me? You don't need any proof? No, Daniel, I know my daughter, and I know you, Danny. Think about it. With that, Ronald left me with a lot to ponder, and I felt conflicted. My mom has never been part of my life since the day she left me. Dad just says they broke up, and that's it. Later, he got married to Aliyah, but she never tried to be my mom, and honestly, I'm fine with that. If you ask me why I wasn't aware of my own mom's family, the truth is, I was only 3 or 4 when my mom left me and my dad. I have a vivid memory of my childhood with her, and my mom used to love me a lot. I never had any resentment towards her, but part of me wanted to know why she never searched for me and why she never contacted me. She never mentioned her family to my dad, so naturally, he didn't know anything about her family either. As the weeks passed, Ronald continued to frequent the bar as he always had. Then, one day, Ronald surprised me with an unexpected invitation. It was his birthday, and he was hosting a private gathering for his family members. But there was a catch. He wanted me and my girlfriend Emily to join the celebration. I was taken aback by the invitation, unsure of what to make of Ronald's sudden gesture of inclusion. After all, I was just a bartender, a relative stranger in the grand scheme of his family affairs. And yet, there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of genuine warmth and sincerity, that touched me in a way I couldn't quite explain. So, when contemplating whether to attend, I discussed it with my girlfriend. She didn't recognize me, and Ronald just accepts it without questioning much. I think if you go, you'll find out what he actually wants, and it's a great chance for you to get to know your family better. I'm still unsure about it. There will be all the family there, and he told you he wants to introduce you to everyone. By the way, you were saying his family is big. Who else is in his family? Well, as far as I know, he has a son and a daughter. And they are married, they have a family, and he has a sister and her family, and he has a girlfriend. Nope. A fiancée, he mentioned. I think you should go at least once. Will you come with me? He also invited you. Me? Okay, I guess. Is it a big party or a small one? Only family members and close friends are invited. So, not a big one. Okay, on Ronald's birthday, Emily and I arrived at his place together. As we entered, the atmosphere buzzed with the excitement of the gathering. The guests mingled at Ronald's birthday party, and I found myself surrounded by his close family members and friends. As I looked around, faces that Ronald had often mentioned came into focus, each one familiar despite my lack of knowledge of their names. It was as if I had already met them through Ronald's vivid descriptions and stories. Alongside Ronald and his fiancée Miranda, there was Rebecca with her husband Mark and their son Ethan, Andrew and his wife Gloria, his son David, and daughter Amelia. A few close friends added to the intimate gathering, including myself and my girlfriend Emily. As Ronald's eyes met mine, I could sense a flicker of anticipation in the air. My presence seemed to catch my mother, Rebecca, off guard, but she maintained her distance, choosing not to approach me. Ronald, however, made a point of keeping Emily and me close by his side throughout the gathering. Ronald's birthday party was hosted by his fiancée, Miranda, but Ronald mentioned that his daughter had wanted to host it. Despite their strained relationship, they maintained a facade of friendliness in front of the guests. The celebration was grand, with a delectable lunch served and Andrew's toast for Ronald added to the festive atmosphere. All eyes turned to me and Emily, the mysterious guests, as anticipation for Ronald's introduction grew. However, Ronald had other plans. "My dear family and friends, thank you so much for attending this party and celebrating my day. It truly warms my heart to see all of you here. Miranda, darling, thank you for hosting such a lovely party. Today, on this special occasion, I want to make an announcement." As Ronald's voice filled the room, curiosity peaked among the guests. "I think it is time to introduce you to a new member of the Turner family." The atmosphere was thick with suspense as everyone awaited Ronald's announcement, their hearts pounding in anticipation. Suddenly, Ronald's sister Julia interjected with an assumption. "What? At this age, you're having another baby?" Her gaze shifted to Miranda, who quickly clarified. "Oh no, we're not pregnant." Andrew chimed in, his tone incredulous. "Dad, please tell us, what is this about?" Ronald chuckled, attempting to ease the tension. "Ha. Calm down, everyone." Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice the pale expression on my mom's face. Ronald continued, his voice steady amidst the family's growing confusion. "I want you to meet Daniel, today's special guest. He is my son." The family's reaction was a mix of skepticism and confusion, except for Miranda, whose reaction seemed less shocked, suggesting she might have been aware of this beforehand. "Oh my God. Ronald, he looked exactly like you when you were young." Andrew quickly denied the possibility. "What? No. Dad, what is this? It is the truth." Andrew echoed his disbelief, unable to process the revelation. "Dad, I can't believe this." Meanwhile, I, glancing up from my plate at Ronald's shocking revelation, only meet his gaze. Emily nudges me, and as I take her hand, she whispers in my ear, "You didn't tell me this?" I also found out right now. But I trust Ronald, let's just play along. After Ronald's shocking revelation, the celebratory mood shifted to one of shock and silence. My mom, whose mouth had been agape, finally spoke up. "Dad, is this a joke? How can this bartender be your son? Does his profession as a bartender have anything to do with the fact that his parents abandoned him, Rebecca?" Rebecca was stunned by his response, realizing that pushing further would only expose her. In frustration, she left the table. Emily and I exchanged smiles, acknowledging the awkwardness of the family introduction as we continued with lunch. At the farewell, all the family members approached me, expressing various sentiments, except for Mark, who departed alongside Rebecca. To my surprise, Andrew was surprisingly accepting of the revelation, and it was evident that Ronald's family, while not entirely chill, was at least receptive to the idea of me being his son, which was a significant development. After all the guests left, Ronald invited me to his study. Leaving Emily in Miranda's company, I joined him, taking a seat across from him as the weight of his revelation settled heavily in my stomach. "Why did you do it, Ronald?" I'm struggling to understand. Ronald's smile held a hint of mischief as he responded. "I apologize, Danny, for not informing you earlier, but you see, your mother, Rebecca, isn't one to easily admit her mistakes. If I were to announce you as her son, she would go to great lengths to deny it. So, instead of revealing that I'm your grandson, you told them I'm your son? Does that even make sense?" Ronald nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "Yes and no, Daniel. I used this as a test for my family. I wanted to gauge their true intentions. As for involving you, you are indeed my grandson, and there's no doubt about that. This is your family, the one you've always longed for." I leaned back in my chair, trying to digest the whirlwind of emotions and revelations that had unfolded. "And where do I fit into all of this, Ronald? What role do I play in your game?" "You are free not to play, but if you decide to, I promise you won't regret it. So, what is your plan? You must have one, right?" I did have a plan. "Even if you choose not to be a part of it, remember, this is your family, and you are always welcome here." So I agree to be a part of Ronald's plan, and he lays out his intentions. Essentially, he's getting older and wants to divvy up his assets to those he deems deserving. As for his own children, he's looking to select the most suitable heir to inherit his wealth. Why he singled me out for this role, well, only he knows the answer to that. Miranda also stands behind his decision. Honestly, I hadn't expected anything not then, not now after learning the full extent of Ronald's plan. After the revelation, attending more and more family gatherings became a regular occurrence. My mom always seemed cold towards me, avoiding me like the plague. However, after a few more gatherings and attempts to engage with other family members, they started to warm up to me. It seemed they had accepted the fact that I was part of their family and weren't bothered by it. Ronald had a routine with his grandkids Ethan, David, and Amelia to meet them every Saturday on a private golf course, and sometimes I also joined them. While David and Amelia would occasionally join in, it was primarily Ronald and Ethan who reveled in these outings. I noticed that Ethan had a good bond with Ronald, which was surprising for obvious reasons. Completely opposite from Rebecca, Ethan was open to me, and I had made a friendly bond with him. Hence, I was afraid to confront him as a step-brother. As my mom wasn't thrilled by my presence, I thought it would be better if I reassured her, hoping she would change her behavior. After a few weeks of attempts, I saw her alone on the lawn, and I approached her cautiously. "Mom?" She gave me an unbothered look, and I went on. "I don't know what you think, but let me tell you, I won't tell anyone about this. You don't need to feel uncomfortable. I just want to reconnect with you, but I understand if you don't want to. I thought maybe if we could talk, we could figure things out. Why? Why are you even here? Honestly, I don't know what to do with you. Why are you playing this game with Dad? But ... can see where you're coming from after all. You are your dad's son." Rebecca's words hit me like a sledgehammer, each one carrying the weight of years of absence and abandonment. "Can I ask something? Dad never told me about why you guys spilt. Not that I pry, but don't I have the right to, at least if there was a problem between you two? It's all in the past." "Really? Then why don't you respond to me? I tried so many times to connect with you and talk to you, but you always ignored me." She still didn't look at me, but I wanted to give her peace of my mind, so I went on. "Why did you leave me? Why did you never come even once? You broke up with Dad, but what was my fault? Did you hate me, Mom?" Rebecca's silence was deafening, but when she finally spoke, her words pierced through the air like a knife. "Daniel, I didn't want you in my life. I realized it later after having you. You were a mistake in my life. I never want to look back there. Do you know how I feel after seeing you here?" Her words cut through me, a painful reminder of the distance between us. It was clear that she harbored resentment towards me, and no amount of reassurance seemed to make a difference. "No, I don't. Because this is the first time you've told me that. And thanks for being honest, but let me tell you, even if you don't want me, I exist and I am your son, and you can't change that. Nobody can." She scoffed and looked at me with disdain. "Ahi, you are only here because of the money my dad is throwing. You come here to collect that, aren't you? Your dad is my grandpa. So even if he throws it to me or gives it to me, I deserve it. Aren't I, Mom? I've tried my best to forgive you, but you show no remorse." Rebecca's accusations stung, but I refused to let her dismiss my presence as merely motivated by money. Despite her coldness, I still held out hope for reconciliation, but her unwillingness to acknowledge her mistakes only fueled my frustration. As months passed, my attempts to reconnect with my mom's side of the family proved to be a disappointment, as expected. But life had other plans in store, ones I couldn't possibly anticipate. It was a typical midnight at the bar, the usual crowd slowly thinning out as closing time approached. Just as I was about to lock up for the night, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Ronald. "Hey Ronald, how's it going?" Ronald's voice was grave, devoid of its usual warmth. "Daniel, I need you to come to my house early tomorrow morning. There's something important we need to discuss. Is everything all right?" "I'll explain everything when you get here. See you in the morning." "All right, take care." The abruptness of Ronald's request left me with a sense of unease, but I pushed aside my concerns and resolved to be there for him. The next morning, I found myself awake unusually early, a sense of urgency driving me to Ronald's mansion. Arriving at his doorstep at 7 a.m., I expected to find him waiting for me, ready to divulge the reason for his summons. But to my bewilderment, the house was eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of life. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls as I called out for Ronald, but there was no response. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind as I made my way to his bedroom, where his phone lay abandoned on the nightstand, its screen illuminated with missed calls. Fearing the worst, I raced to the main hall, hoping to find answers from the housekeeper or anyone else who might be present. But the mansion stood silent and still, a ghostly echo of its former bustling life. Then I called Miranda, and she answered promptly. What she told me left me stunned. Ronald had suffered a sudden cardiac arrest and was rushed to the hospital. I hurried to the VIP floor, where I found Julia and Miranda already waiting. Miranda. What happened to Ronald? He had a cardiac arrest this morning. I called the doctor, and he's in the ICU right now. Is he stable? How serious is it? Miranda's expression was grim, reflecting the gravity of the situation. The doctors are doing everything they can, but it's touch and go. Is he stable for now? We won't know more until the doctors update us. I nodded, trying to process the overwhelming emotions coursing through me. Did you inform Rebecca and Andrew? I tried Andrew, but couldn't reach him. Let me give it a try. After an hour and a half, Rebecca arrived at the hospital with Gloria, while Andrew, who was out of town, was informed. How long has it been? About 3 hours. Oh, my Ronald. Please, dear Lord, guide the doctors and save my brother. Mr. Ronald's condition has stabilized, but we need to monitor his progress closely. However, he'll need to remain under expert care for the time being. Thank God. Can we see him? Not just yet. He's still in the intensive care unit, but you'll be updated regularly on his progress. Several days later, Ronald is discharged and brought home. Dr. Smith emphasized the importance of strict bed rest and careful monitoring for his recovery. A few days later, Ronald called me again. As I entered his room, the sight of Ronald lying in bed with the oxygen mask made my heart ache. He looked frail, his once vibrant spirit now overshadowed by the weight of his illness. Danny, I think it's time for me to go. I want to have some final words with you. I couldn't bear to accept what he was saying. My mind raced with denial, hoping against hope that he would recover. Come on, Ronald. You still have so much spirit. You're not ready to leave yet. A faint smile crossed his lips as he spoke in a raspy voice. I believe it's my time, Danny. I remember when I first saw you. You were just a kid looking for a job. Then, I saw you at the bar. There was something about you, a connection that I couldn't ignore. Tears welled up in my eyes as Ronald expressed his gratitude for our time together. I feel the same way, Ronald. It means a lot to me that we've had this chance to connect. You're a good kid, Danny. I know life hasn't always been easy for you, but I believe in you. Keep following your heart and never give up on your dreams. I nodded, unable to find the words to express my gratitude. Thank you, Ronald. I'll always cherish the memories we've shared. That's good to hear. Remember, I'm proud of you, and I'll always be watching over you. My voice trembled as I pleaded with him not to leave. Please, Ronald, don't go. I can't bear to lose you. The pain. It's becoming unbearable. I need to find peace. A profound sadness washed over me as I realized that our time together was coming to an end. I'll miss you, Ronald. And I'll miss you, too, Danny. That night, Ronald passed away. The funeral was huge, with all sorts of people there, important ones, his business buddies, and of course, us, the family. As we mourned, everyone started buzzing about who'd take over Ronald's company. There was also talk about his illegitimate son, adding a layer of complexity to the situation. Losing him was a great loss for me. I lost my friend and my family. I had Emily on my side. As I looked at Rebecca, she cried so much that she fainted. Her husband rushed to her side and held her, but she regained her composure, wiping her tears away. A few months later, Miranda called me to Ronald's mansion. I arrived to find the entire family gathered in the study, waiting anxiously for Ronald's executor to arrive with his will. Julia stood by as a witness. As the executor began to reveal the contents of the will, the mood in the room shifted drastically. Rebecca, who had expected to be named CEO of the main company, learned that Ronald had chosen Andrew instead. Ethan received a seaside villa along with a few of Ronald's favorite assets. Miranda received shares in a subsidiary company and the role of executive there. David and Amelia were bestowed with Ronald's blessing and love. Rebecca, growing impatient, rose from her seat, prompting Mark to urge her to calm down. What else? Please don't keep us in suspense. I couldn't comprehend what more they could be waiting for after Andrew had been appointed CEO. Mark echoed his sentiment, urging the executor to continue. And he donated 20% of his wealth to children's charities and hospitals. The executor put the document down. And? Is it just one page? What about Ronald's shares? Everyone glared at Miranda. What? Why are you looking at me? Didn't you hear? I get the subsidiary company, that's it. Oh, that. Let me check. Ronald's shares of the main company will transfer to Daniel Mitchell. Who's that? Everyone was shocked, including me this time. I had no idea about that, and Ronald never told me this, but who's going to believe me? He just came here and received all the shares. And what about us? That's all in the will. Gloria couldn't believe it and grabbed the will herself, checking it. Rebecca, behind her, snatched it to see it herself. Rebecca furiously came at me, grabbing me by the collar. You get what you want, right? Calm down. I had no idea about that. The hell you will. That's why you approached him. That's enough. I had nothing to do with you anymore. I was here only because of Ronald. No, you were only because of me. I am your mom. Everyone in the room was shocked by this sudden revelation. I had to clarify what my mom just said. Really, Mom? You think you're my mom after abandoning me as a kid? All those years you never looked back at me. You didn't even recognize me when you saw me. And now you call yourself my mom just because you gave birth to me? No way. I never had any intention to even connect with you. I can't forgive you. It was only Ronald who was my friend. He also had no idea about me being your son. And you call yourself my mom? Everyone was stunned and silent after my outburst. Ethan leaves the room and Mark sits down on the chair. I said everything I wanted to say. All those years of pent-up frustration finally released. Rebecca was stunned by my outburst, and only Julia gave me a sad smile as if she knew about it. I bid farewell to the rest of the family, knowing they had a lot to figure out. A few weeks later, Ethan got in touch, and we stayed connected. He told me his parents were having some problems because of what happened, but Rebecca was still the same, no apologies or attempts to fix things. I decided not to forgive her and just keep moving forward.